co-chair of the MFA Designer as Author program and the author of over 100 books. This is one of his lectures in the Paul Rand Lecture Series.
For the last dozen years or so, I've been really interested in how graphics and graphic design has been used by governments to influence their citizens, to propagate their ideas and ideals, and sell their ideologies. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a book called Iron Fists, and the work you're going to see in this podcast are artifacts from 4 totalitarian regimes of the 20th century, and how those regimes use these particular signs and symbols and narratives to convey their message and ultimately persuade their citizens. Before we start, here's a little something by Laura Chipley to get you in the mood. Who would deny that was not rousing? Walter Benjamin said, "Fascism is the aestheticizing of politics." Arguably, politics are also aestheticized in democracies and under other forms of government. But this talk, based on my book, Iron Fists, Branding the 20th Century Totalitarian State, is not about contemporary politics or the Bush administration's failed attempts to brand the American way of life in the Middle East, but rather how 4 20th century regimes used graphics to capture the hearts and minds of their citizens. During the 20th century, despots, not unlike corporate executives today, established convincing narratives supported by graphic identities, logos, and trademarks. These graphics triggered instantaneous recognition among the public for their ideas and products. Media-savvy rulers believed this would ensure what we'd call brand loyalty, the ultimate objective of every branding strategy. They created images based on charismatic characters, not unlike the trade characters used to sell everything from detergent to snack foods to headache remedies to fast food. I know comparing how corporations and totalitarian states are marketed may seem harsh. After all, a popular brand of frozen food or laundry detergent is not forced down the consumer's throat with an iron fist. Still, the design and marketing methods used to sell doctrine and those aimed to guarantee consumption are fundamentally similar. Branding is ostensibly a benign practice, but it's used to capture the loyalty of a targeted and hopefully malleable demographic. Today, I will talk about how 4 20th century totalitarian regimes, Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, Soviet Russia, and Communist China, were creative in their use of branding strategies. First, let's look at the image of the ideological trade character, which I call the cult of the leader. We'll start with El Duce, or Benito Mussolini, Mussolini was the art director, or the art dictator, of the fascist style. He was also the most ubiquitous symbol. When he came to power in 1922, he exchanged the old national symbols of Italy for new fascist icons. Most notably, his own omnipresent, lockjawed visage rendered in painting, stone, and stencils. Policy also demanded that the word duce, which means boss or duke, be used everywhere, spelled in all Roman capitals, as a typographic chant. Duce, duce, duce. He was also quite the fashion plate, and dressed in different styled uniforms at every opportunity. Like an actor in a play, these uniforms were really costumes. Referencing ancient Rome, busts of duce were as common as the Caesars. In this early sculpture, his raised chin is exaggerated to imply power and majesty. In this bust, his forward brow makes him look like a Klingon from Star Trek. Italians were unable to escape his searing gaze. Or his virility. Duce saw himself as a great coxman, so this phallus is an appropriate political statement. Many will know who this is. Adolf Hitler was a living logo in every sense. Sign, symbol, figurehead, mnemonic, aide-de-memoire, and even mascot. He was deliberately designed not to resemble the typical German aristocrat or bureaucrat, but rather the proverbial big brother, the savior of the German race. Rulers before him were immortalized and monumentalized, but Hitler's image was skillfully stage managed for what today broadcast industry calls Q rating. In this 1932 election poster, it is so minimalist that it could easily be considered modernist. A hypnotic gaze, the forerunner of the 1984 Big Brother image, focused on the viewer. It had a simple caption headline, Hitler. The only typographical tick was a seemingly superfluous square over the I in the name, but perhaps it was a visual pun on his famously cropped mustache. Erwin Schockel, the Nazi poster historian and art director, wrote, "The impression it makes on people of unspoilt mind must be powerful. In addition, we had the poster printed on a black background, which at the time served as an eye catcher in the midst of the otherwise garish color of advertising pillars." Hitler was never shy before the camera. Incidentally, his personal photographer, Heinrich Hoffmann, profitably continued for 2 decades to help shape Hitler's image through production of portraits, postcards, portfolios, and books sold at his retail atelier in Munich. And Arno Breker, Hitler's favorite sculptor, made a small fortune producing busts which were placed in every official office building. Minister of Information Joseph Goebbels oversaw the myth of the infallible Führer, who was strong as iron, but kind to children. In fact, Heinrich Hoffmann devoted 2 pages of his retail catalog to photographs of the leader petting dogs, pinching the cheeks of young boys, and accepting flowers from young maidens, in addition to the official ones shown here. The goal of the photos, paintings, posters, and these postage stamps was to ensure that his followers maintained intimate identification with their leader. By the way, the Führer received a royalty of a pfennig every time one of these stamps was purchased. Many of you know the posters of Ludwig Hohlwein. His work was key to propagating the Hitler myth. It was clear to the public relations savvy Nazis that for standardization of Nazi doctrine throughout society to succeed, it was necessary to micromanage public opinion. Dr. Goebbels' National Ministry of Popular Enlightenment and Propaganda, which was also known as PROMI, was organized into 7 divisions that covered the broad range of social communications and cultural concerns, including stage managing the Führer. Branding was important because Hitler did not want to repeat the mistakes of World War I Germany, which could not win the propaganda war with the Allies. Now to Mao. He was considered the chairman or the great helmsman. Mao's face and words were everywhere. He was the principal trademark of the Cultural Revolution. The Maoist brand was perpetrated in every corner of China and eventually etched on revolutionary movements throughout the world. I call this the chocolate Mao. The cult of Mao was a cult of personality. It was also a coordinated propaganda effort by Mao's stalwarts to revivify his mythic stature as the great leader, largely conceived to return absolute power into his sphere and aggrandize those who sided with him. His myth was built upon his early years as a revolutionary, and though he evolved into the Buddha-like image, much was made of his youthful demeanor. The Cultural Revolution was ostensibly triggered by Mao's realization that he relinquished power too soon. Mao had cultivated a superego that enabled him to deny his own failings and led him to find new means to restore his iron-fisted rule of China. He was most venerable leader and greatest revolutionary instructor, as the Red Guards referred to him. Many images portrayed him as just one of the people, like the ping-pong player par excellence. Mao regained his power and his stature at the outset of the great proletarian Cultural Revolution, when he commanded impressionable minions to bomb the headquarters or attack existing party and government power structures, and thus purge and humiliate high-ranking officials. When hordes of young Chinese wearing red armbands converged on Beijing's Tiananmen Square on August 18, 1966, they did not decry the decrepitude of the 73-year-old Mao Zedong's moribund communist regime. Song Bin, a young female Red Guard, presented Mao with an armband with the motto, "Serve the people," that was pinned to his jacket. This became an icon. Mao's orchestrated acceptance of that armband during this demonstration was not only an affirmation of his power, it was the assurance that the subsequent Chinese generation exclusively belonged to him. By the way, Mao never brushed his teeth, so they were coated in black. In photos of him smiling, his teeth were always pearly white. Such is the magic of retouching. Let's move on to Lenin. Lenin sought to give equal hero status to his fellow revolutionaries and was apparently extremely reluctant to promote his own heroics. He valued power, not adulation. Nonetheless, as the symbolic core of the Bolshevik Revolution, it was inevitable that Lenin would be raised on the pedestal and heroically depicted, if not as a deity, then as the loftiest equal among equals. The most famous and reproduced of the official Lenin portraits, Lenin on the Tribune, 1929, showed the leader surrounded by flags against sky with light mystically shining behind him. The first poster depicting Lenin in his characteristic ill-fitting suit, tie, and cap, rather than a military or political uniform, was published in 1918. That was the same year he survived an attempted assassination, which added more patina to his brand story. Wearing civilian clothes was consistent with the ideal of the classless society. Nonetheless, the Lenin cult sparked its own momentum, particularly when acolytes like Politburo member Grigory Zinoviev conferred divine status on him. He said, "He is the authentic figure of a leader, such as is born once in 500 years. As Lenin's health declined, his unblemished